In most cases, the world of acting is one of the most difficult lines of work to break into. Of course, there are those who get into the industry as child stars and go on to earn a living that way until they retire. Outside of these young actors though, the bills need to be paid before that first gig comes along. So, I'm Ewan, you're watching What Culture, and here are 10 actors who had insane careers before movies.
Want to stay safe online and save big? Get up to 76% off a 2-year NordVPN plan, plus 4 months free and up to a $50 Amazon gift card. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description and it's all yours.
Number 10. Whoopi Goldberg was a mortuary beautician. Not only can Whoopi Goldberg boast an outstanding career spanning decades, she's also a fantastic comedy writer. She's seen on daily TV in the US on The View, and has an Oscar win to her name for her role in Ghost in 1991. And on top of all that, she's also a trained beautician, something that she put to use in a very specific way before she got famous. Now, most people with such qualifications would use them while dealing with the living, but Whoopi Goldberg went in a different direction, working in the morgue. Now, the nature of such a job would make it seem like an incredibly difficult thing to do, but you can also imagine it being incredibly rewarding in helping to give people the best send-off possible. It would have helped that the future Oscar winner looked at it with a wonderful sense of humor too, as she once told David Letterman. To come out of situations like that and still be able to tell a funny story with a smile, and her face says a lot about her character. However, no matter how much she says she enjoyed the work, it's hard to imagine it comparing with being an actual movie star. Number 9. Chuck Connors played professional basketball and professional baseball. For someone to make it as an actor, generally they would have to have a lot of relevant talent. Similarly, an insane amount of skill and ability is required to play any sport professionally, let alone be good enough for 2 different games. So, when someone has the talent to act, play basketball, and play baseball, all at a high level, well, that's just an unfair distribution of skill. However, that is exactly what Chuck Connors could boast. Before a 4-decade-long on-screen career that saw him star in the likes of The Big Country and Tourist Trap, and arguably being most well known for his role as Lucas McCain in The Rifleman, Connors had played both professional basketball and professional baseball. Standing at 6'5" tall, the soon-to-be actor certainly had an athlete's frame, and played for one of the biggest basketball teams in the world, the Boston Celtics, in their inaugural 1946 season. After being released by the Celtics, he became one of just 13 people to have played in both the NBA and MLB, when he turned out for the Brooklyn Chargers in 1949. Then, after a brief stint with the Chicago Cubs, he began his soon-to-be illustrious acting career, which saw him granted a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1984. Again, to reiterate, that is a completely unfair amount of talent for one person to have. Throw some my way, please, Chuck, because God knows I'm in desperate need of it. Number 8. Gabby Sadibbe worked for a phone sex line. Breaking into the film industry is famously next to impossible, and there simply has to be something to bring the money in and pay the bills until the big break comes along, if it ever does. Gabby Sadibbe, likely most well known for her roles in the likes of American Horror Story, Empire, and her big screen debut in Precious, had a stranger career than most before making it big, in that she worked for a phone sex line. As she told Jimmy Kimmel, she made a lot of money and earned several promotions to the point that she was even monitoring the calls of the other workers, almost as something of a quality check kind of thing. And yeah, it's kind of insane to think that just 6 years later, she had gone from talking on and listening to phone sex calls to being nominated for an Academy Award. Just goes to show that you never know what's around the corner. Number 7. Jason Statham was a professional diver. Some actors have made names for themselves over the years thanks to their ability to adapt and to play any kind of role required. Look at the range of people like Gary Oldman, Stanley Tucci, or Cate Blanchett, among many others, and you'll rarely see a similar role twice. Then, on the other hand, there are those who have been famous for carving out their own identity that is injected into every single role they play. The bold, typically Cockney badass characters portrayed by Jason Statham all share that similarity, and it's actually quite hard to imagine him being anything else. Before his acting days, though, long before the likes of The Meg, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, or the Fast and Furious franchise, Jason Statham was a competitive diver. Yeah, he even represented England at the Commonwealth Games in Auckland in 1990 and had Olympic aspirations that were, unfortunately, never realized. And yeah, as weird as it is to see Statham diving in clips online, it's maybe even weirder to see him with a full head of hair. Number 6. Wyatt Russell played professional ice hockey in Europe. You'd be forgiven for thinking that with Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn for parents, Wyatt Russell could have waltzed into an acting career anytime he wanted. As it happens, Russell has carved out a successful career for himself on screens both big and little. But despite being a child actor, he initially pursued his dreams elsewhere. Long before playing the temporarily most hated character in the MCU, John Walker, the actor played professional ice hockey in Europe. After a successful college playing career, Russell signed with German team EHC Timmendorfer Strand 06 and played in 4 games, before moving over to Dutch side Pacoma Grizzlies Groningen in 2009, where he featured in 13 games before having to retire due to injury. Like Jason Statham, who brought some of his diving skills to his acting life on the set of The Meg, Wyatt Russell has starred in 2 separate films as a hockey player. First in This Is 40, and then in Goon, The Last of the Enforcers, which is a great title. In spite of giving up his hockey career many years earlier, Wyatt Russell was invited onto the ice for the NHL's 2022 All-Star Skills Challenge, where he played in goal against the league's elite, and at least got to live out his dream in some small way. Number 5. Terry Cruz played in the NFL. As far as childhood dreams go, there generally won't be too many higher on the list than movie star or professional athlete. Some even get the chance to be both. The likes of Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar all rose to the top of their sport and earned a movie role or 2 off the back of their success. But that's not what happened with Terry Crews. From 1993 to 1995, Cruz played in 32 NFL games for the Los Angeles Rams, the San Diego Chargers, and the Washington Redskins. However, it wouldn't be too unfair to say that he left the game without ultimately having any real impact on the sport. In the year 2000, however, he earned his first acting credit in The Sixth Day, and his career has skyrocketed from there. He is now an undeniably recognizable name, and has taken his backup career and made himself a star. He certainly isn't the only NFL-turned actor to go this way either, as the late great Carl Weathers, among others, is also a member of that club. He may have become famous as Rocky's rival turned friend Apollo Creed in 1976, but he was a linebacker for the Oakland Raiders just 5 years earlier. Also, random British tangent here, Vinnie Jones, maybe a bit obvious, but used to play football. Number 4. Channing Tatum worked as a stripper. Of course, actors often draw from their own personal experiences when portraying a character, as it allows them to bring a depth and understanding that they may not have been able to channel otherwise. For some, like Jason Statham or Wyatt Russell, this can involve their previous lines of work. But Channing Tatum, well, he took this a step further. Dancing was really what set Tatum on the rise to stardom. His debut may have come as basketball player Jason Lyle and Coach Carter, but it wasn't until a year later in 2006's Step Up that audiences really took notice of him. Then, of course, there was the Magic Mike franchise, which was in fact loosely based on Tatum's time spent as a stripper before he became famous. This was something he spent a year of his life doing, and was ultimately channeled into arguably the actor's most famous and iconic role. When Tatum hosted Saturday Night Live in 2012, just a few months before the release of the first film, he incorporated his talents into his monologue, which likely didn't hurt ticket sales when the time came. Number 3. Matthew McConaughey was a golf course exterminator. Sometimes it's the strangest of circumstances that can lead to the best things in life. In that vein, it would seem that Matthew McConaughey owes getting his big break in large part to his love of the game of golf. This isn't the only time that the sport has played an important part in the now legendary actor's life. As well as having a lifelong love of the game, it was at a golf club in Austin, Texas, where he was given his first paying job, namely raking the sand traps. With this being a big and busy golf club, McConaughey needed to have all of the sand raked by 7 a.m., which meant a 3:30 a.m. start. As if those hours weren't unsociable enough, the young man was then offered a second job on the course that ran from 10 p.m. until his start time of 3:30. What did this involve, I hear you ask? Well, taking care of the armadillo problem, in that the future actor would camp out with a rifle and pick off the little guys that were coming onto the course and chewing up the green. It lasted for 2 weeks and was, according to McConaughey himself, the best part of the job. Number 2. Christopher Walkin was a lion tamer. There are certain actors that draw themselves to certain characters, or play their roles in a certain specific way. One such being Christopher Walkin. It seems that no matter the role, Walkin has the ability to add his own spin of wacky eccentricity, whether he is playing a gigantic orangutan in the jungle, a dog kidnapper, or anything in between. It should be no little surprise then that there is an element of that same eccentricity in the actor's own personality, from his speech pattern that almost automatically lends his characters something unique that no one else would, even down to the first job he had as a kid. Okay, so I'm willing to wager that at 16 years old, the majority of people would likely look for any job that they could get, and one that would maybe be a bit boring. The young Christopher Walkin, though, somehow managed to nab himself a gig as a lion tamer. The lion in question was called Sheba, and Walkin spent a whole summer training her, particularly enjoying how she'd act like a pet dog whenever he entered the cage. If the whole acting thing didn't work out, well, there are far worse backups than working with lions, right? And number 1. Jon Hamm worked on an adult film set. Today, Jon Hamm is a name widely known to mainstream audiences, be that for his role as Don Draper in Mad Men for 7 years, or for his roles in the likes of Bridesmaids, Baby Driver, Top Gun Maverick, or even Good Omens. However, back when he was 25, with all of this to come, he packed up his drama teaching job and headed across the country to Los Angeles like so many other aspiring actors. The plan was to get by as a waiter or a bartender until something big came along, but that didn't quite work out. Instead, he was offered a job as a set dresser in a local warehouse for an adult film studio. He turned up to what he described as the shadiest thing in the world, and was so depressed he couldn't handle it for more than a month, which maybe isn't that surprising. Some of the actors on this list have had jobs that were insane in the best of ways, but Jon Hamm isn't likely to look back on his time working on such films in the same way Christopher Walkin remembers training Sheba the lion, I'm guessing.